My brother has two young adult children, Maisie, 19 years old, and Cassidy, 18 years old. I am a gay man in my 50s. Both Maisie and Cassidy are very young for their ages. They live out their lives entirely online, and neither of them have any real-life friends. They are both very into fandoms around boy bands. They both have some interest in fashion, which they follow on social media. Roughly 2 years ago, Cassie announced identifying to be a male. As part of this, Cassie changed fashion somewhat to be a kind of goth/glam/androgynous look. Cassie has long hair and wears a great deal of makeup, and this did not change after the announcement. However, Cassie began adding in a mustache and small goatee, which were applied with makeup. I am part of a very tight-knit group of friends in this city who are all gay men. Cassie never showed much interest in my social life before, but after his announcement, he began asking to attend my social events. I told Cassie that once he turned 18 years old, he could come. All of my friends are in their 40s and 50s, and most of them are married with kids. We drink wine and talk about our lives, and it's usually very domestic, but it can get raunchy. The first uncomfortable part was that anytime there was any reference to intimacy, Cassie would loudly huff and sigh, and at one point rush out of the room. I'm presuming Cassie is not comfortable with intimacy, but I was not going to babysit him as he is an adult. Once Cassie had a glass or two of wine, he loosened up more, but it got a lot worse. The word FT started flowing out of Cassie's mouth nonstop. Cassie repeatedly talked about how every aspect of himself proved how he was such a FT and had always been one. Cassie brought up his love of fashion and boy bands as examples of this. This caused a stunned, uncomfortable silence in the room. Each and every one of us in that room besides Cassie has been called that word before by someone who was in the midst of doing terrible things to us or threatening them. Cassie has never been in a position to be called that in any context. As Cassie had more wine, he kept on changing the subject back to his boy bands. We are grown-ups with interesting lives, and none of us are interested in boy bands. Anytime the conversation strayed from fashion or boy bands, Cassie hijacked it back as he got more drunk. People started leaving, and I was furious. Because Cassie is apparently terrified of confrontation, I told my brother that Cassie will not be welcome back to any of my events until he grows up more. Apparently, Cassie had a meltdown and said that he needed to attend these events to be part of his community, and it was a need for him, not a want. My brother is acting like I'm responsible for Cassie's mental health. Am I the jerk? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, not the idiot. Look, Cassie might think he's found his tribe, but barging into an adult social circle with boy band gossip and offensive slurs isn't the way to make friends. Your gatherings are for mature adults to unwind and connect, not for playing babysitter to someone who can't handle grown-up conversations. Cassie's behavior was out of line, constantly derailing conversations and using offensive language that carries painful memories for everyone in the room. Just because he wants to be part of the community doesn't mean he gets a free pass to act inappropriately. You're not responsible for Cassie's meltdown or his mental health. He needs to grow up and find a more suitable crowd to fit in with. Maybe he can join a fan club or a support group that's more in line with his interests and maturity level. Your friends shouldn't have to tolerate that kind of behavior just because he needs to be there. Comment 2. Cassie had a meltdown and said that he needed to attend these events to be part of his community. Your events are not Cassie's community. Cassie's community would be other 18-year-old children whose only exposure to queer culture is mediated representations he's consumed online or on television. Queer people are not a monolith, and not all people want to be social with other people. Also, Cassie needs to learn basic human decency and how to hold his liquor. ETA, not the idiot now, for the update. Thanks for all the comments from the last post. So a lot has happened since then, and it's been a rough few days. First off, my brother called me the day after I told him about Cassie not being welcome at my events anymore. He was really upset and said that Cassie had been crying nonstop. He kept saying that Cassie felt like he was being rejected by his own community. I tried to explain that it wasn't about rejecting him, but about the way he behaved. My brother didn't want to hear it and hung up on me. The next day I got a call from one of my friends who was at the party. He told me that Cassie had been messaging him and some of the other guys, apologizing for his behavior. But the thing is, Cassie was also asking them if they could talk to me about letting him come back. My friend said he felt really uncomfortable because he didn't know Cassie that well and didn't want to get in the middle of family drama. I told him I understood and that I'd handle it. Later that day, I decided to talk to Cassie directly. I called him up and tried to have a calm conversation. I told him that I appreciated his apology, but that his behavior was really inappropriate and hurtful. Cassie started crying and said that he didn't know how else to fit in. He said that he thought using that word would make him seem more like one of us. I told him that it was the opposite and that it was really offensive. He apologized again and said he didn't know what else to do. That night, I got a call from my brother again. He was even more upset this time. He said that Cassie had locked himself in his room and wasn't coming out. He said that Cassie felt like he had no one to talk to and that he was really worried about him. I felt terrible, but didn't know what else to do. I told my brother that Cassie needed to learn that actions have consequences and that he couldn't just say whatever he wanted without thinking about how it affected others. The next day, things took a turn for the worse. My brother called me in a panic. He said that Cassie had run away. He found a note in Cassie's room saying that he couldn't handle being rejected by his own family and community. My brother was frantic and didn't know what to do. I told him to call the police and report Cassie missing. I also called some of my friends to see if they had heard from Cassie, but no one had. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Cassie and how he must be feeling. I felt guilty for not handling things better and for not being more understanding. I kept replaying the events of the party in my head and wondering if there was something I could have done differently. The next morning, my brother called me with some news. The police had found Cassie. He was at a bus station trying to buy a ticket to another city. They brought him back home, but he was still really upset. My brother said that Cassie was refusing to talk to anyone and that he was worried about his mental health. He asked me if I could come over and try to talk to Cassie. When I got to my brother's house, Cassie was in his room with the door locked. I knocked and asked if I could come in, but he didn't answer. I sat outside his door and talked to him through the door. I told him that I was sorry for how things had turned out and that I wanted to help him. I told him that I understood that he was going through a lot and that I wanted to be there for him. After a while, he opened the door and let me in. Cassie was a mess. He had been crying and looked exhausted. I sat down with him and we talked for a long time. He told me that he felt like he didn't belong anywhere and that he didn't know how to be himself. He said that he thought coming to my events would help him feel more connected to the community, but that it had backfired. I told him that I understood and that I wanted to help him find a way to feel more connected without causing harm to others. We talked about ways he could get involved in the community in a more positive way. I suggested that he look into some Queer Plus support groups or events that were more geared towards younger people. I also told him that he needed to work on understanding why using that word was so hurtful and that he needed to find other ways to express himself. Over the next few days, things started to get a little better. Cassie agreed to see a therapist to help him work through his feelings. He also started looking into some support groups and events that he could attend. My brother and I talked about ways we could support Cassie without enabling his negative behavior. But then, just when things seemed to be getting better, something else happened. My brother got a call from Cassie's school. They said that Cassie had been getting into arguments with other students and that he had been using that word again. They said that some of the students had complained and that they were considering disciplinary action. My brother was at his wit's end. He didn't know what to do and felt like he was losing control. I tried to help him come up with a plan, but it was clear that things were spiraling out of control. Cassie was struggling, and it was affecting everyone around him. In the end, my brother decided to take a leave of absence from work to focus on helping Cassie. He said that he needed to be there for his son and that he couldn't do that while working full-time. I offered to help in any way I could, but it was clear that this was going to be a long and difficult journey for all of us. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for refusing to pay for my colleague's expensive meal and causing workplace drama? I'm a first responder and was riding along with another shift for training purposes. The first day we drove through Chick-fil-A, I ordered a small mac and cheese. In our area, that's about $4. He ordered a whole meal. When we got to the window, they gave us 50% off, making mine $2. The guy I was riding with said, "Don't worry, I'll cover you." Cool. Thank you for covering my $2. I appreciate it. The second day we went to a local bistro that's decently pricey. I ordered a salad that was about $10. His meal totaled out to just over $20. When we went to the register to pay, he told them, "She's going to cover mine," while pointing at me. To say I was appalled is an understatement. The cashier looked at me and I calmly stated, "No, I will just be covering myself." The guy I was riding with got mad and started saying he covered me for lunch yesterday, so it's only right that I cover him. I'm not confrontational, but I'm also no punk. I calmly stated, $2 does not constitute $22, or whatever the total was. If you'd like me to give you $2 to cover my small side I ordered yesterday, I will absolutely do that, but I will not be paying for your meal, and handed my card to the cashier. He paid for his meal and we went outside, where he refused to let me get into the vehicle. He continued to argue and cause a scene in the parking lot. He told me I'm no longer allowed to ride with him, so I called for a supervisor. Once the supervisor arrived, he told them that he covered my lunch yesterday and that I refused to extend the same courtesy, and that I embarrassed him and caused a scene, and he no longer feels comfortable riding with me. I explained my side to the supervisor and apologized, because this is literally so ridiculous. The supervisor essentially said I was wrong because I should have just been respectful and paid for him like he did me. At this point, I was pissed and told them this sounds like extortion and that I wasn't going to be taken advantage of. I told them that $2 is a whole lot different than $22. We're first responders. We don't make a lot of money. I continued to say, if he wanted me to buy him a drink from the gas station or give him $2, I had absolutely no problem doing so. But I was not going to be bullied into covering his meal because he covered mine. I ended up riding with someone else because, obviously, riding with him is no longer an option. The person I switched to also said I was wrong and should have just paid for his meal. I don't think I'm wrong here. Had I known the previous day that I would be expected to pay for his expensive meal after paying for my $2 mac and cheese, I would have never let him cover me. I feel like since he put me on the spot, me putting him on the spot in return was only fair. I don't feel like I caused a scene. I wasn't the one who argued and refused to unlock the doors. But now everyone's saying that I'm not a team player and I embarrassed him as well as our place of work. Am I wrong here? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, not the jerk. What is wrong with all your colleagues? I do a similar role as you and no one behaves like that. Ever. I think $20 is quite expensive for a work meal. It would have to be a once-in-a-blue moon to pay that on my wage, so I'm guessing he would not have spent that amount had he not been expecting you to pay. He's having a laugh, and the others are dimwits. Comment 2. Unfortunately, hazing is common in first responder work, and most expect you to roll over for it. Fortunately, it's being done less, but obviously not where you are. Good for you for standing up to this. It's going to be tough for you for a while, though. Hang in there, not the jerk. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading. So a lot has happened in the past 2 weeks since that whole ordeal with my colleague over lunch payments. After the incident, I was assigned to ride with another team member, and things were going smoothly for the first few days. However, the tension from the previous situation seemed to follow me. I noticed that some of my colleagues were giving me the cold shoulder, and there were whispers whenever I walked into the room. It was clear that the story had spread, and most people seemed to side with the guy I had the disagreement with. One day while we were on a call, I overheard 2 colleagues talking about how I was difficult to work with and not a team player. This really got under my skin because I pride myself on being professional and cooperative. I decided to confront them directly but calmly to clear the air. I explained my side of the story again, emphasizing that it wasn't about the money but about the principle. They listened, but I could tell they weren't entirely convinced. The turning point came when we had a team-building exercise organized by our supervisor. It was a mandatory event, and everyone had to participate. We were paired up randomly for various activities, and, as luck would have it, I was paired with the guy I had the initial conflict with. The awkwardness was obvious, but we had no choice but to work together. During one of the exercises, we had to navigate an obstacle course while blindfolded, relying solely on verbal instructions from our partner. It was a test of trust and communication. At first we struggled. He was hesitant to give clear directions, and I was reluctant to follow his lead. But as the exercise progressed, something shifted. We started to communicate more effectively, and by the end of it, we had completed the course faster than any other team. After the exercise, we had a debrief session where we had to discuss what we learned about teamwork and trust. It was during this session that he finally opened up. He admitted that he had been holding a grudge because he felt embarrassed by the whole lunch payment incident. He said that he had been under a lot of stress and took it out on me unfairly. This admission was a huge relief for me because it validated my feelings and showed that he was willing to take some responsibility. I also took the opportunity to apologize for any part I played in escalating the situation. I explained that I never intended to embarrass him and that I was just standing up for what I believed was fair. This honest conversation seemed to break the ice, and we both agreed to move forward without any hard feelings. The fallout from this new understanding was immediate. Word spread quickly that we had resolved our differences, and the atmosphere at work started to improve. Colleagues who had been distant began to warm up to me again. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. However, not everything was smooth sailing. One of the supervisors who had initially sided with my colleague seemed to hold a grudge. He started assigning me to less desirable shifts and tasks, clearly trying to make my life difficult. I decided to document everything and approached HR with my concerns. They assured me that they would look into it, but I knew it would take time for any real change to happen. In the meantime, I focused on doing my job to the best of my ability. I also took the opportunity to get to know my colleagues better. I realized that part of the reason the initial incident blew up was because I hadn't built strong relationships with my team. I started joining them for coffee breaks and participating in more social activities outside of work. This helped to rebuild trust and camaraderie. One day during a particularly busy shift, we had a call that required all hands on deck. It was a serious situation and everyone had to work together seamlessly. I was paired with the same colleague again, and this time, there was no hesitation or awkwardness. We worked together efficiently, and the call was a success. Afterward, he pulled me aside and thanked me for my professionalism and teamwork. It was a small gesture, but it meant a lot. As for the supervisor who was giving me a hard time, HR eventually intervened. They conducted an investigation and found that his actions were indeed biased. He was given a formal warning, and his behavior towards me improved significantly after that. Reflecting on everything, I realized that this whole experience taught me a lot about standing up for myself, the importance of communication, and the value of building strong relationships with colleagues. It wasn't easy, but I came out of it stronger and more resilient. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for calling out my daughter's fiancé for lying about his finances and gambling problem? My daughter is planning a wedding with a man she's been seeing for 5 years. She met him at 20, and he's 8 years older. We were apprehensive at first because of the age difference, but he was respectful, attractive, smart, solidly employed, and treated our daughter well, so we got over our apprehension. Over the years, this man, let's call him John, was a bit of a big spender. We are not. We're a solidly middle-class couple and are financially conservative. Over the years, John has consistently assured us that he's financially okay, even savvy. He told us he is an avid financial independence, retire early movement enthusiast. He let us know about a big $150,000 win on GameStop. He let us know about a $500,000 inheritance, and then another $500,000 windfall from a business sale. He shared his cryptocurrency knowledge and wins. He told us about the sale of a property he bought at the bottom of the market that he was selling at a handsome profit because he didn't like being a landlord. Meanwhile, he slowly became part of the family, coming to holidays and eventually vacations. My daughter mentioned some red flags: heavy pot smoker / time-consuming online gamer / obsessive day trading. But after a few breakups, he'd always course correct. We're a few months away from the wedding when he told my daughter that they'd have to wait 5 years to buy a house. This made no sense. My daughter has saved enough for a down payment on her own. He wants children within 2 years. So why wouldn't he want to find a home before then? I pressed her to see the finances before they marry, and sure enough, he was lying. Yes, his retirement is fully funded, but his savings is nowhere near where it should be based on all his stories and his age income. He broke down crying with story after story of where it all went wrong. He rode GameStop back down to nothing. He broke even on the house. He lost the inheritance to bills of a relative. The business sale only netted 1/3 of what he expected. He's been living above his means, but it's partially my daughter's fault because she enjoyed those dates. Right? Ugh. As conservative spenders, we were perplexed by the Mercedes, the Peloton, and the latest gadgets, gaming systems / $1,500 scooter, etc. In the spacious male 2-bedroom apartment, without a roommate to offset costs. But our daughter would assure us that his plan was to retire at 40, and all his windfalls and smart investing allowed for all the extras. Now that we know the truth, we're sickened. He blatantly lied for years to my husband and me. We wouldn't have cared if he was a regular guy financially, but feel that he created this facade so we wouldn't be concerned about his aggressive spending. We feel betrayed, and we feel he's a horrible con that can't be trusted, and that he most likely has a gambling problem. My daughter wants to move forward with the wedding, and we feel it will be the biggest mistake of her life. She feels we're overreacting. Am I the jerk? Now for an update, it's postponed. It sunk in last night, and the gravity of 5 years of deception had her reassess. A rough road ahead, but the plan for all of us to reacquaint with this person and take this slowly. He was part of our family, and I believe we can all benefit from some family counseling to understand what exactly happened here. Thanks, Reddit. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. She has no qualms about her future husband lying to her about something as big as finances for years. She doesn't care that he can't retire at 40 or that the life they've been talking about is now impossible. I understand love, but come on. You need to encourage her to take some time before she makes any big decisions, like getting married or calling off the wedding. I understand your frustration. I'd be furious. But please try to focus on creating space for her to safely land so she sees that going through with this isn't her only option. I'm so sorry, NTA. Comment 2. NTA. She's falling victim to the sunk cost fallacy. Doesn't want all that time to be wasted, so she is going to waste more time with him. There isn't much you can do other than lay it out for her that he has lied repeatedly, tried to blame her, and shows no real remorse or intention to change, just an intention to not get caught next time. Then tell her you love her and will be there for her as much as you can when stuff goes sideways. But he may put her in a hole you can't dig her out of without putting your own finances at risk, which you won't do. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with us through this. So after the wedding was postponed, things got pretty intense. My daughter decided to move back home for a bit to clear her head and figure out what she really wanted. John, on the other hand, was devastated, but agreed that some time apart might be good for both of them. They both started individual counseling, and we all agreed to do family counseling together. A few days into this new arrangement, John came to us with a proposal. He wanted to show us his financial situation in full transparency. He brought over all his bank statements, investment accounts, and even his credit report. It was a mess, but it was also a step in the right direction. He admitted that he had been living way beyond his means and that he had a lot of debt. He also confessed that he had been using credit cards to fund his lifestyle, which was why he was in such a financial hole. My daughter was heartbroken, but also relieved to finally know the truth. She decided to take a more active role in their finances if they were to move forward. They set up a strict budget and started working on paying down the debt. John sold his Mercedes and some of his other expensive gadgets to help pay off some of the debt. He also got a second job to bring in extra income. During one of our family counseling sessions, John revealed something that shocked all of us. He admitted that he had a gambling problem. He had been using his winnings from GameStop and other investments to fund his gambling habit. He had been hiding this from everyone, including my daughter. This was a huge blow, but it also explained a lot of his behavior. My daughter was furious and felt even more betrayed. She decided to take a break from the relationship to focus on herself and figure out what she wanted. John agreed to go to a gambling addiction support group and continue with his individual counseling. As the weeks went by, my daughter started to see some positive changes in John. He was more open and honest about his struggles, and he was making a real effort to turn his life around. He even started volunteering at a local community center to give back and stay busy. One day, my daughter came to us with a new plan. She wanted to take things slow with John and see if they could rebuild their relationship. She also wanted to focus on her own career and personal goals. She decided to go back to school to get her master's degree, something she had always wanted to do but had put off because of their relationship. John was supportive of her decision and promised to continue working on himself. They agreed to start dating again, but with no pressure to get married anytime soon. They also decided to keep their finances separate for now and focus on building a solid foundation for their future. Throughout all of this, we learned a lot about ourselves and our family dynamics. We realized that we had been too focused on appearances and not enough on the substance of our relationships. We also learned the importance of open and honest communication. One night during a family dinner, John shared a story from his childhood that gave us some insight into his behavior. He grew up in a family where money was always tight, and his parents often fought about finances. He vowed to never live like that, which led to his obsession with making money and living a lavish lifestyle. This was his way of proving to himself and others that he was successful. Hearing this story helped us understand him better and gave us some compassion for his struggles. It didn't excuse his behavior, but it did help us see him as a more complex person with his own set of challenges. As we continued with family counseling, we started to rebuild our trust in John. He was making real progress in his recovery, and my daughter was finding her own path. We still had a long way to go, but we were all committed to working through this together. In the end, the wedding postponement turned out to be a blessing in disguise. It forced us all to confront some hard truths and make necessary changes. My daughter and John are in a better place now, and we're all hopeful for the future. Thanks for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.